Having a crucial conversation with my wife last night about the situation she brought up was one of the toughest discussions we've ever had. It wasn't easy for either of us, but it was necessary to address the issues at hand and reaffirm the strength of our relationship. I started by expressing my feelings openly and honestly. I told her that her request to sleep with someone else deeply hurt me and made me question the foundation of our marriage. I explained that for me, marriage is about exclusive love, trust, and commitment. Opening it up to other people felt like a betrayal of those values. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her proposition and how it made me feel. Listening to her perspective was important too. She shared her attraction towards her colleague and her desire to explore something new. I empathized with her feelings but reiterated that acting on those desires would have serious consequences for our relationship. We talked about how infidelity, even if it's agreed upon by both parties, can damage trust irreparably. I reminded her of the promises we made to each other when we got married. We vowed to love, honor, and cherish each other, forsaking all others. I emphasized the importance of those vows and the commitment they represent. I told her that while I understand her curiosity about exploring new experiences, our marriage shouldn't be sacrificed for it. We discussed the possibility of meeting each other's needs within the confines of our marriage. I assured her that I'm open to trying new things together and finding ways to keep our relationship exciting and fulfilling. I suggested exploring fantasies or trying new activities that could reignite the spark between us. I wanted her to know that I'm committed to making our marriage work, but it has to be a joint effort. Rebuilding trust was a key aspect of our conversation. I expressed my hurt and disappointment at discovering the sexting and inappropriate photos she had been sending to her colleague. Trust is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship, and I made it clear that it would take time and effort to repair the breach caused by her actions. I needed her to understand the impact of her behavior and take responsibility for rebuilding trust. Ultimately, we reaffirmed our love and commitment to each other. We acknowledged that our marriage isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. We agreed to work through this challenge together with open communication, honesty, and respect. I assured her that I'm here for her, no matter what, and that together we can overcome any obstacle. It wasn't an easy conversation, and there are still challenges ahead. But I'm hopeful that by facing this issue head-on, we can emerge stronger as a couple. Our love is worth fighting for, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to preserve it. In addressing the future of our marriage, I firmly expressed to my wife that I wouldn't be taking up the free pass she offered. Strangely, she appeared upset by my decision, which left me perplexed. When I inquired about her feelings, she deemed my choice immature, insinuating that I was trying to prove something. I reassured her that my love for her was genuine and that I didn't require anyone else to fulfill me emotionally or physically. However, she brought up my past relationships, arguing that it wasn't fair that I had more experiences than she did. She felt entitled to explore similar opportunities. This revelation caught me off guard, prompting me to inquire about the colleague from her workplace. After a prolonged discussion, she reluctantly admitted to some physical involvement, but insisted it hadn't progressed beyond a certain point. Nonetheless, they had tentative plans to meet, pending our conversation. Asserting my need to meet him beforehand, I aimed to gauge the situation for myself. Surprisingly, she agreed, albeit somewhat reluctantly. In an attempt to lighten the mood, she mentioned our past role-playing experiences, suggesting that I might find this arrangement enjoyable too. She even offered to record the encounter for my viewing later. While I agreed, I made it clear that my feelings could only be determined afterward. If I found myself uncomfortable or unhappy with the situation, she'd be required to end it. That night, we shared an intimate moment, and she's been particularly attentive ever since. going out of her way to reassure me of her love and commitment. From cooking breakfast to offering massages, her actions clearly demonstrate her genuine concern for my happiness. Hence, we've reached a tentative compromise. If I find myself discontent with the outcome of their meeting, she's agreed to call it off. However, if she struggles to do so, I'll seek professional guidance to navigate through this challenging phase in our marriage. Update 2. Last weekend, my wife went ahead to meet her co-worker, and they engaged in various intimate activities. Afterward, I felt the need to discuss boundaries with her. However, my attempt sparked her ire rather quickly. She argued vehemently, claiming that I had no jurisdiction over what transpires between two consenting adults in the privacy of their bedroom. This reaction left a sour taste in my mouth, especially considering I had started feeling a bit more at ease with the situation. Later on, I broached the idea of joining them during their next rendezvous, thinking it might help me feel more comfortable. Surprisingly, my wife seemed open to the idea initially. However, when she consulted her co-worker, he expressed discomfort with my presence. Consequently, my hopes of being included were dashed. I began questioning whether it was typical for open relationships not to establish clear boundaries. Update 3. This past weekend marked a turning point for me. My wife's departure early Saturday morning lacked any consideration for my feelings. Not only did she make me take pictures of her to send to the guy she was seeing, but she also left without so much as a goodbye kiss. Initially, she assured me she'd be back that same night, but the hours ticked by with no sign of her return. Come Sunday morning, she nonchalantly mentioned that she had stayed over at his place without bothering to seek my opinion beforehand. What's worse, she disclosed that she had engaged in intimate activities with one of his friends that night, showing a complete disregard for how I might react to such news. When she finally returned home and shared these details with me, I couldn't contain my emotions. I was visibly upset. However, instead of acknowledging my feelings, she dismissed them as unmanly. This dismissive attitude was the final straw for me. It became abundantly clear that her feelings towards me had changed drastically. Her behavior was a stark departure from the loving and caring persona she had always exhibited. It felt as though she had undergone a sudden and drastic transformation since meeting this co-worker. I find myself almost certain that she will ultimately end up in a relationship with him, given the amount of time they spend together and how frequently she talks about him in my presence. I attempted to assert some semblance of control over the situation by warning her about the necessity of setting boundaries. However, she merely laughed it off, further exacerbating my sense of powerlessness in the matter. Unable to tolerate the situation any longer, I made the decision to leave. Without uttering a single word, I packed my belongings and sought refuge with my brother for the night. Throughout the night and into the next day, my wife bombarded me with texts expressing confusion and sadness over my departure, claiming she missed me. Despite her attempts to reel me back in, I knew I needed to stand firm in my decision. With the support of my brother, I returned home, determined to maintain my resolve and not succumb to her manipulative tactics. Update 4. After leaving my wife last week and seeking refuge with my brother, I decided to return home, accompanied by him, to try and prevent a messy divorce. When we arrived, my wife attempted to communicate with me, but I chose to ignore her completely, acting as though she didn't exist. However, her behavior took a disturbing turn as she became physically aggressive, assaulting me by hitting my chest. In response, I pushed her away, prompting my brother to intervene and warn her that he would involve the authorities if she continued her violent behavior. Eventually, she backed off and left me alone for the rest of the night. The following day, I received a picture from my wife showing her with a new co-worker, but it was devoid of any accompanying message. I shared this unsettling development with my brother, who couldn't comprehend her actions and questioned her state of mind. Realizing the need for legal counsel, I arranged a meeting with a divorce attorney for an initial consultation. During our discussion, the attorney provided valuable insights and guidance, emphasizing the importance of gathering evidence, such as pictures and videos. However, he cautioned that my wife might attempt to argue that I consented to the situation, despite the clear signs of manipulation. Seeking solace and support, my brother and I visited our parents to disclose the situation to them. Initially, they were taken aback and skeptical about the allegations against my wife. However, after my brother corroborated my account, they recognized the gravity of the situation and expressed a desire to confront her about her behavior. Moving forward, I'm grappling with a whirlwind of emotions and uncertainties. I'm struggling to come to terms with the fact that the person I once thought I knew has transformed into someone unrecognizable. This experience has shattered my faith in both love and relationships, leaving me feeling lost and disillusioned. As I navigate this challenging chapter in my life, I'm faced with difficult decisions about how to proceed. From confronting my wife about her actions to seeking legal recourse for the dissolution of our marriage, I'm grappling with a myriad of complex issues. Despite the turmoil and heartache, I'm determined to reclaim my sense of self-worth and rebuild my life, one step at a time. Opting not to involve my brother, I mulled over whether to inform her parents. Unsure if it was my place, I eventually concluded it was necessary to preempt potential lies she might spread about me. Arranging to meet them solo at their place, I steeled myself for the conversation. As we exchanged small talk, I mustered the courage to divulge what was unfolding. Their expressions were incredulous. They seemed repulsed. Clearly, they hadn't witnessed this side of their daughter before. Surprisingly, they refrained from blaming me. Recognizing my love for her and my desire to ensure her happiness, they even embraced me before I departed, tears welling in our eyes. They grasped the necessity of divorce, despite it being the last resort for me. Over the weekend, I focused on consultations with my attorney and cherished moments with my brother. However, on Saturday night, a text from my wife disrupted my tranquility, announcing her impending visit. Politely, I urged her not to come over, but she disregarded my request and arrived shortly thereafter, leaving me feeling cornered. Our exchange began with her alluding to her parents' ire and the looming prospect of divorce. Taken aback, I realized I hadn't yet broached the subject with her. Originally intending for the lawyer to convey the news, I found myself thrust into the confrontation prematurely. When she criticized my decision to confide in her parents before her, I defended my actions. Explaining my discomfort stemming from her manipulative conduct, I clarified that I sought her parents' perspective to preempt the potential dissemination of falsehoods. She kept blaming me for everything, repeatedly asking if it was true that I was filing for a divorce. I confirmed it, and then she started sobbing uncontrollably. For about 15 minutes, she didn't say anything. When she finally spoke, she asked me why I was doing this and why I didn't talk to her first. I explained that she had been very manipulative throughout all of this and had treated me like I didn't matter. Feeling humiliated by her and the co-worker, I told her I couldn't take her back. Eventually, she left. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and missed calls from her. Most of them were long messages and voicemails of her apologizing and expressing her love for me. It was hard to listen to them because they reminded me of our past and how much I loved her. I was in tears, but I resisted the urge to respond. Instead, I reminded myself of her actions in the past few weeks. Since she left that night, her friends have bombarded me with messages, urging me to take her back. They were furious, accusing me of betraying her by talking to her parents first. According to them, her parents were the only ones she had now. This whole situation has been incredibly chaotic, and I can't believe how emotional the past few days have been. I do feel guilty for informing her parents first and causing them to turn against her, but I'm relieved they're on my side. Meanwhile, her friends continue to attack me, sending threats and insults. I haven't heard from my wife since she sent those long messages and voicemails. I suspect she's either staying with the coworker or seeking refuge with her friends, as her parents are currently unsupportive. Surprisingly, I've found the strength to stand up to her. This weekend has shown me that I'm capable of asserting myself and making difficult decisions. To everyone who has shown concern and sent kind messages, I'm truly grateful. I'll do my best to keep everyone informed about any significant developments. Thank you for your support. Goodbye.